I think it's important, and I think that's a beneficial thing for the community that everyone's like, hey, by the way, don't be fooled by Lauren Southern's now Finn civil veneer. She still holds these atrocious political beliefs. Destiny recently made a post regarding his decision making process for confronting Lauren Southern on a lot of her previous content, and then, I think importantly, how that leans into and how that ties back to what she's currently advocating for and talking about today. This post is called Decision Trees, and it was put on Destiny's Reddit. So, essentially, we're just going to read through it, and I'm going to give my thoughts on it. So, here we go. Decision Trees, posted by Neo Destiny 2 years ago. He's now suspended, by the way, at the moment. So, feel free to talk about how bad Destiny is on his Reddit, especially at League of Legends. He can do nothing about it. You are free to insult his League of Legends gamer ability on his Reddit right now. Free pass. They don't want you to know this, but it is legal to talk shit about Destiny's League of Legends on his Reddit right now. Okay, just know that. Just a public PSA. Aside from that, anyway, let's start reading. Whenever I'm presented with difficult choices that can lead to wildly different outcomes, I like to draw out decision trees and estimate probabilities for each outcome to see what an optimal decision would be. These are the trees I've mapped out for the LQ, the Loring question. I think this is a good way of making decisions. And I think that because I do the same thing, and I am gonna reinforce and say that what I'm doing is good because I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think that it was good. But let's go. Here are the three outcomes that Destiny thinks could happen. He could think that Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and wins. Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and loses, or Steven ignores Lauren's past videos. Here are the outcomes for each of them. So for point number one, Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and wins. There are two possible outcomes from this. Outcome A, Lauren admits fault, and the result for that, according to Destiny, is that it is negligible for him, it is bad for Lauren, and it is good for community bloodlust. Outcome B, Lauren dodges and cuts off contact. The result is bad for Destiny, good for Lauren, and good for community bloodlust. Action 2, I shouldn't say three outcomes. There were three actions. So action 1 was Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and wins. Action 2, Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and loses. And action 3, Steven ignores Lauren's past videos. So action 2, outcome A. Steven admits fault. Result, bad for Steven, good for Lauren, bad for community bloodlust. Outcome, Steven dodges and cuts off contact. Results, bad for Steven, bad for Lauren, bad for community bloodlust. Step 3, Steven ignores Lauren's past videos. Action 3, this was. Outcome A. There's only one outcome for this. Things stayed the same. Results, good for Steven, good for Lauren, and bad for community bloodlust. If I were to assign a probability to these events, I would say 1.2 is the most likely. That being that Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and wins, and that then Lauren dodges and cuts off contact. He's essentially saying that he would beat Lauren in debate. I'm confident I could present a compelling argument that our past takes on immigration were bad and likely increase the resulting anti-immigrant sentiment in our communities, indirectly or directly leading to things like the rhetoric that inspired the Christchurch shooting. However, I'm also fairly confident that she would never publicly admit fault or disavow her past videos for several reasons. Number one, she will likely never be accepted by left-wing communities, so making concessions to them is pointless. Number two, she will push away some aspect of her fan base if she appears to be apologizing for any past takes relating to immigration. So when I consider all the paths I could walk, almost nothing works out well for me aside from ignoring videos made in 2017 and moving forward. Even if I won a debate and convinced her videos in 2017 were bad, I don't gain much satisfaction out of that. It is unconscionable that I would attack any other creator for videos they made 5 years ago, and I have little care for people disavowing or apologizing for any past wrongdoings. From a community perspective, even if she did disavow some of her past videos, so what? Are we saying that the current Great Replacement rhetoric is going to stop? Would the current shooter not have gone on this rampage? Would any current thoughts on the internet change? Probably not. There's little to be gained in any sort of apology other than to satisfy the bloodlust of some community members. For those that compare me bringing up past comments of other content creators, why? I'm probably one of the most forgiving people on the internet. The only comments I'll bring up in the past are when they are in line with current behavior. I have ran defense for so many people who have done past shitty things when I believe they are no longer in line with their current behavior. even if they never made an apology for said behavior. See Irish Laddie / Poppy scandal. If people say dumb things today, I'll criticize them for dumb things today. I have no idea how any of you could engage with any of my content for more than a month and thought I was the kind of person that would be obsessively chasing down apologies or retractions from people or videos they made 5 years ago. Here are my thoughts on all of these things. Number one, I think the main thing missing here that I think would be important is if we had an explanation for how Destiny determines how this is going to impact him, Lauren, and community bloodlust, and what he defines as good or negative. So, for example, like, what's the bad here for Destiny with Lauren dodging, cutting off contact? What is the negligible gain here for Destiny if Lauren admits fault? Yeah, what is the bad in each of these? And for some of them, it's fairly obvious, right? So, for example, this one. Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and loses. Steven admits fault. It's fairly obvious that it's bad for Steven. But, for example, when it comes to stuff like this, where Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and wins, what is determined as good or bad for Steven is pretty ambiguous. I assume part of what goes into this is Steven loses like a contact, somebody that he hangs out with, which would be Lauren. That would be part of this. But also, I don't know if he's factored into this, and this is something that Destiny has said that he has done in the past, and there's nothing wrong with it, the fact that it would be a huge, massive fucking debate that would get a lot of viewership and a lot of conversation around them. I don't know if that's been factored in. I don't know how he determines what's good or what's bad. It's difficult to know because he doesn't really say. He just kind of states, this would be good for me, bad for me, good for me, bad for me, but we don't get any understanding of like what the weighing is. Additionally, I think one of the major things that is being missed here is that, number one, I think accountability is decently important. In the sense that I think it's important that we at least get recognition for what was going on in the past. A full-on like apology for everything may not be necessary, assuming that behavior and rhetoric has changed. However, at least a recognition of like, okay, this is what I was doing in the past, and at the very, very least, not lying about what was going on in the past and what was being pushed in the past, I think is pretty important. And I think that's an important thing to enforce in online political spaces. And I think that leads to good outcomes if we can at least realize that, like, hey, you know, it's fine if these videos are long ago, you don't agree with them anymore, but at least recognize what they were and don't just be blind to the effect that you had back then. So that's point number one. But point number two is that a lot of people would argue, myself included, that she is still pushing that message. As I, talked about in my last video, she is still pushing similar messaging. She's still actually even using clips from that era, from videos titled like the Islamization of Europe, in her current videos that were uploaded just a few weeks ago. She hasn't had a radical change in messaging or in her opinions. It seems like she very much still carries out those opinions and will still look back and pull from those periods where even Destiny would admit that she's saying crazy shit if she thinks that it's beneficial to her, essentially. And that's the second part that I feel is kind of missing from here in this piece of analysis. So he asks a lot of questions here, and I can answer some of them. So, it is unconscionable that I would attack any creator for videos that they made 5 years ago. That's fine. I think I understand this 100%. But once again, this is contingent on the fact that their behavior is significantly different from back then and not just coated and made more palpable. Furthermore, as well for me, a standard I like to see is I like at least us to have like a standard of recognition in the online politics community, even though it might have been something that you did, badly before. It's at least important that you recognize that was a bad thing, right? So that even from Destiny's framework of I don't care about apologizing at all, I just care about what this person does in the future, that person recognizing that they did something bad in the past is going to be hugely demonstrative and predictive of what they're going to do in the future. So, while Destiny might say, oh, I don't give a fuck about people apologizing at all, I literally do not care, I only care about whether or not they're going to do it again, them recognizing that what they did before was bad or wrong or incorrect or whatever is really predictive of what they might do in the future. Because if somebody, happens to dodge questions and will not be like, okay, yeah, what I said before was wrong, it was incorrect, I disavow, then chances are that they're still pushing it, or that they would still push it in the future, which is what Destiny cares about and is concerned about, is significantly higher. So once again, That's why I agree with how this is written, on paper, like the sentence structure, what the meaning is. However, I think put in context with Lauren Southern, I think this is not the way that I would frame it. And I don't think this kind of phrase and this sentiment and this kind of action plan fits given Lauren Southern and her history. I have little care for people disavowing or apologizing for any past wrongdoings. From a community perspective, even if she did disavow some past videos, so what? Are we saying that the current grace replacement rhetoric is going to stop? Would the current shooter not have gone on his rampage? Would any current thoughts on the internet change? Probably not. There's little to be gained from any sort of apology other than satisfying the bloodlust of some community members. I think I disagree with this, and this was something that popped up initially when I read this, even after, like before I'd read this latter half, which is that there seems to be something that is missing from his analysis here, which I now understand why it's not part here after reading this, but I would still argue that it would be part here. And that extra thing, that extra variable, that extra stakeholder that is not taken into consideration here would be broader effect on the online politics community and on kind of like the online politics discourse and yeah, just political videos online when it comes to how people perceive Lauren Southern and engage with her content and stuff like that. So for instance, if Steven were to confront Lauren on, her past videos and the sentiments, and ideally then as well how they carry over and affect her today, and does well there winning, assuming that she was wrong about what she said in the past. She recognized that she was wrong about, no, she doesn't necessarily have to recognize it, but he demonstrated that she was wrong about the things in the past, and then also ideally that she's still pushing those things. I think it's important, and I think that's a beneficial thing for the community that everyone's like, hey, by the way, don't be fooled by Lauren Southern's now Finn civil veneer. She still holds these atrocious political beliefs. And it's important that we all know what's going on here and don't get fooled by the sanitization efforts. And I would say that that's a good thing. I would say it's a good thing when we have higher transparency and people overall have better understanding of the real goals and ambitions and beliefs of the political commentators that we see and engage with in this space. As such, I think it would be an extra added thing here to be like, hey, also increased good for the political communities because it improves transparency and it lets us understand the actors and their motivations and ambitions and goals and beliefs and stuff in a better way. And that was missing from here, which I thought initially was strange because, I think that's an important stakeholder in this. What effect it has on the online politics community, the people that engage in political content online. So he's saying here that essentially there won't be any effect of it. And obviously, it won't stop things that have already happened in the past. However, what it may very well do, and what is very important, is that like, hey, now when people maybe look up Lauren Southern's content or this debate gets recommended, they know more about her. They understand more about her political beliefs currently and how her past things affected that and the way that she perceives her past political advocacy to have been. As such, that being essentially, permanently indexed along with all of her other content, a debate in which by the end of it, assuming that Steven wins, will have increased transparency in the way that we view Lauren Southern and understand her beliefs, ambitions, and motivations. I think that's a positive thing for preventing people from being fooled by essentially a more civil veneer that Lauren Southern is pulling on, and then being further pulled into the more radical elements of Lauren Southern's community and further along the pipeline. Case in point, the comments I went over in Lauren Southern's, recent video 2 weeks ago about Sweden had a lot of very direct, heavy, far right and white supremacist statements and beliefs. The one about, well, it happens that all conspiracy theories end up being correct. Europe for the Europeans. People just seem to end up better if they're just kept apart and they stay in their own homelands. Oh, Sweden used to be so homogenous and perfect, but now it's a multicultural disaster. These elements still exist in her community. There are people that are taken there from her content. This is still actively going on. And as such, it is, I think, valuable. It does contribute to value to have a piece of content, to have a big debate where it's like, hey, this is Lauren Southern. This is what she really believes. These are her views on a set of views that she espoused in the past. Has she actually changed? Depending on the outcome of the debate, we would see. And I think that's a valuable thing. So obviously, no, it won't stop, you know, what's it called, like the shooters that have already happened. I'm not sure if it would like stop the current great replacement rhetoric, but it would at least stop people from unknowingly kind of getting into the pipeline there of being pushed towards that side of the political aisles. And given Destiny's value system, given his political beliefs, this should be something that he thinks is positive as well. So while I now understand why he didn't put the element I'm talking about now in his analysis here of the stakeholders, given that he doesn't believe that there would be an impact on that at all, I would disagree on his analysis here regarding him saying that there wouldn't be any actual real world or any actual significant impact from me having this debate. And thus, I also think that that would belong here. And if it would belong here, then it would be distinctly positive in both of these two. In Steven confronts Lauren on her past videos and wins. And assuming that, you know, Lauren is actually correct and she wins the debate against Steven regarding her past content, and she has sincerely moderated and all of these things, and therefore Steve loses, it would still be beneficial here. Because then, presumably, assuming that the debate is a test of what's really correct and what's not, which once again is a very imperfect test for that, but assuming that that would be the case, and Lauren would defeat Steven purely on the merit of her arguments, then that would be good even here as well. Because then we would still have better transparency. So we would see positives here anyway. The only one of these 5 outcomes where you wouldn't see a positive increase in like transparency and understanding about Lauren Southern and her content would be if there was no debate and there was no discussion. So as such, that would be an exclusive outcome, negative outcome, I feel, and a more of like a loss of a positive outcome that would come about by ignoring Lauren's past videos. Yeah, and therefore I would think that it probably would be a good idea to have this discussion as a whole. But yeah, those are my takes on the thing overall. Now, I'm going to say, because I recorded the last video again, I challenged Lauren Southern to a debate on Swedish immigration and her history and relationship with the Great Replacement. And in there, I also said that, like, hey, you know, I think Destiny would make a good moderator for this because it's somebody that I know, at least I regard as an impartial moderator. And I think that she regards as an impartial moderator as well, given that Destiny has moderated multiple Lauren Southern debates in the past, and it seems like she holds him in fairly high regard. So that's another alternative to this. You know, kind of like, fine, I'll do it myself, I suppose, if Destiny still doesn't change his mind on this and wants to, you know, keep not having this discussion with Lauren Southern, which if he does that, then it's fine, he does that. But I would absolutely be willing to have that discussion. So I'm just mentioning this here again, because I think that it's relevant. So yeah, overall, that's my take on the Destiny decision trees. The parts I think is good, the parts that I disagree with, and the parts that I'm curious about, that we didn't get enough information on, I think. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you.